Yes guys, hello guys, good evening and welcome again. So today we want to continue from where we ended. So today we want to enter into what we call a new topic. So we want to enter inside a new topic. So and the topic of today we want to talk of what we call road. So we have finished or we are done with the car. Now is we are going to study what we call the road. And considering the road or the road we are going to study, the road, when we talk about the road, this is what we call the road. The road is the path that the vehicle move on it, and that one we call it pavement. So the pavement is what we call road, or you can call it carriage pavement. That is what we call road. This is what we call road. And on the road, and as we are talking about road, we have to talk on what we call signs, and there are many signs that we have to know as far as road is concerned. So the first type of sign, when I'm talking about type of sign, know that we have type of signs and we have kind of signs. So today we are talking about type of signs. So when we are talking about type of sign, don't be confused between type of signs and kinds of sign. So when we are talking about the type of signs, we are talking about, oh, there are four types of signs, of road signs. We have four types, and when we talk about kinds of road signs, we have three. So take good note of that. We say we have four types of road signs. So when we are talking about type of road signs, we have four. The first sign, we have what we call the horizontal signs. The horizontal signs, when we talk about horizontal signs, we talk about the marking on the road. That is what we call horizontal sign. Then we have number two, what we call the vertical signs. The vertical road signs are those signs that you see being placed on poles around the roadsides to tell the driver what to do or to warn the driver. Those ones, we call it the vertical road signs. Remember, horizontal signs, they are the marking of the road, and the vertical signs, they are the pole you see the pin beside the road. Then number three, we have what we call the silver light or the silver sign. When we talk about the silver signs, we talk about the traffic light. So the traffic light, we call it the silver road signs. Then we have number four, which we call it the manual road sign. When we talk about the manual, you see maybe on the road you see a police officer who raises the hand up, and you see people crossing or stopping vehicles. Those one we call it manual. Those time we call it manual signs. So those are the three types of road signs you need to know, and you have to know it very well. Number one, we call it horizontal signs. Horizontal signs, they are the marking on the road, the lines you see, the white line or the yellow lines you see on the road, we call it the horizontal. Vertical signs are those signs that you see on the poles on the road. These signs you see on the poles, we call them the vertical road signs. Then we have the silver sign. The silver sign, we talk about the traffic light. That is the silver sign, which is number three. And number four, we have what we call the manual road signs. Manual, we talk about the police officer stopping vehicles, control children to cross. Those things we call them manual. Or during road walk, you see somebody will hold a flag, and the driver will take a flag and go and give it to the other driver. It's thank you for coming, and we are continuing from where we ended. So I told you that today we have to study the road, and we call the road the pavement. That is the road pavement or the carriage pavement. So the first thing we need to study, we want to talk about the lines on the road. The lines, we call it the horizontal road sign. So we have about 5 types of line that you need to know. That is the marking on the road. You see when you are moving on the road, you see roads, you see lines draw in white, and you see line draw in yellow, and you don't know the meaning. So today I want to explain to you the meaning of those lines, because those lines you see on the road, those lines, they have their meaning, and those lines tells driver what to do. So today you are privileged to watch the video, so you will learn how or what is the meaning of those lines you see on the road pavement. So today we want to start with the first line we see on the road. So the first line you see on the road, that is in the middle of the road. Yes, these lines you see in the center of the road, we call it, this the center of the road or the middle part of the road, we call it the carriageway. So take note of that. The middle line, these lines you see in the middle of the road, we call it the carriage, we call it the carriageway. And on the carriageway, that is where a vehicle can overtake another one on the carriageway. But a vehicle does not have to overtake at any time, so you really need to know that. So we have the first type of line that you will see in the middle of the road or at the center of the road. We call those lines broken lines. And if you see these broken lines, and you see maybe in someone you will see the lines, when we call it broken lines, you will see the lines and the gap between those lines is a little bit bigger, and the space, that is the space between this line on the carriageway, the space between the broken lines is 10 meters, and the line itself drawn on the tar is 3 meters. So you have to take note of that. That is the length of the line draw in the middle of the road is 3 meters. That is when we call about broken lines, and the space between those lines is 10 meters. And this line, we call them broken line. This line, you can overtake another vehicle whenever you see this line. And before you want to overtake, you must take note that you see very far, more than 200 meters, and you don't see any other vehicle coming on the opposite direction, then you can overtake. We can only overtake only on these lines. These lines you see, we call them broken lines. You will just have to, and for you to overtake on this line, you just have just about 5 seconds for you to overtake, and you enter back on your road. So there is the line. This is a sample of what is happening on the road, and you can see this vehicle, although the vehicle is a very big vehicle, and the vehicle is trying to overtake this other vehicle on this line. We call this line that this vehicle wants to overtake, we call it the broken lines. And these vehicles have just 5 seconds for him to overtake the vehicle in front of him and go back to his own side. So you have to take note. These lines, we call them the broken lines because the space in between those lines are bigger, and the space between those lines are 10 meters. So you have to take note of that. Broken lines have a distance of 10 meters, and the line itself has a length of 3 meters. So you have to take note of that. So that is the first line you will see on the road. We call it broken lines. So we go now to the second set of line on the road. We call it solid lines or continuous lines. Continuous line, they are this line, you see it in the middle of the road. That is the straight or a solid white line or yellow line. If you see white line, because the yellow line replaces the white line. Anywhere you see the white line or the yellow line, it means the same thing. So when we are talking about solid line, we are talking about this line that you see in the middle of the carriageway, very solid and long. We call it solid or continuous line. And whenever you are driving, whenever you meet this line, you are not supposed to overtake. This line tells you not to overtake. So you have to take note of that. Whenever you are driving and you see this continuous line, or this solid line on the middle of the road, you are not supposed to overtake. Those lines prohibit you, tells you not to overtake, so you have to take good note of that. So we are going to the next set of line, or on the carriageway we call it warning line. Warning line, they are this line with this arrow you see on the road. This arrow tells you, you call this arrow, we call it pull back arrow. That is to pull back to your side, pull back to your side. We call this arrow pull back arrow, and this line we call them warning line. And after you see this pull back arrow, the next line you will meet the solid line. And if you want to continue with the solid line, the next thing you will meet what we call a bend. You will meet a bend. Either the bend is going to the left or to the right. Whenever you see this arrow, pull back arrow, you just have to pull back and go back to your side. Don't stay on the carriageway, because that place is dangerous. What is ahead of you is very dangerous. So whenever you see this arrow, this pull back arrow, you make sure you pull back and go back to your side. So that is the meaning of this warning line. So whenever you see the warning line, you just make sure you go back to your side. So guys, thank you for watching, and I just want us to continue. So remember, we have talked about the broken lines, we have talked about the solid line or the continuous line. We talk about the warning line, that whenever you see this arrow, pull back, go back, go back. You just have to follow the arrow, and you make sure you go back to your side. So the next line we are going to talk about, that is what we call dissuasion lines. Dissuasion line. Yeah, so the next line we are going to talk about is what we call dissuasion line. That is dissuasion lines. These lines are broken lines, but the gap between those lines are very short, and the length of those lines are still the same, 3 meters. The gap between these lines is 1.33 meters. So you have to take note. Dissuasion lines, if you see this line, they are very short. The gap between this line, they are very short, as you can see on this road. This is what we call dissuasion lines. The gap between these lines, they are very short. These lines, they are part of warning lines. On these lines, you are only supposed to take vehicles who are moving very slowly. Don't go and overtake on this road anyhow, or on this line anyhow, because you may involve in an accident. So whenever you see this line, these lines are part of the warning line, but on this line you can only overtake slow moving vehicles. This line we call it dissuasion lines. And from that is after the dissuasion lines, you will see what we call the warning lines, and after the warning line, you will see what we call the solid line. So you have to take note when you are driving. These lines, they are part of the road signs warning you on what to do, on how you can drive. So we have talked about broken lines, we have talked about solid line, we have talked about warning lines, we have talked about dissuasion lines, and the next line we are going to talk of is what we call mixed line. So mixed line, they are this line on the carriageway. There are always 2 of them. You may have one solid line and one broken line. As you can see, we have one solid line and we have one broken line. It can be in white or it can be in yellow, but this line, they mean the same thing. When you are driving and you see these 2 lines, you have to consider the line that is closer to you. If you are moving on the right and you see this line on your left, which is solid, and the other one on the other side is broken, you on the right, you are not supposed to overtake any vehicle. But the person who is moving, coming on your left on the opposite side, will see the broken lines the person can overtake, but you going, seeing the solid line closer to you, you are not supposed to overtake. So we have to take good note of that, of this line. We call them mixed line, because many people are confused whenever they see this line. Whenever you are driving and you see this line, this broken line to your right, you have to follow it and make sure you can overtake, because this line is on your right. You can overtake, but the person that is coming on this